Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai World News. We're starting today with some deeply significant news out of Scandinavia. Norway's King Harald V has passed away at the age of 89, bringing an end to a reign that stretched across 35 years. Both BBC News and the Financial Times are reporting on this historic moment, and the story is a big one. King Harald was the oldest reigning monarch in Europe at the time of his death, and his passing marks the close of a truly remarkable chapter in Norwegian history. Now, what made Harald stand out wasn't just his longevity on the throne, it was the kind of king he chose to be. He famously broke royal tradition by marrying Sonja Haraldsson, a commoner, back in 1968, a decision that was controversial at the time, but which ultimately helped modernize the image of the Norwegian monarchy. Harald was also known for a celebrated speech in which he embraced Norway's multicultural identity, declaring that Norwegians were immigrants, indigenous people, and everything in between. That speech is still quoted today. The Financial Times notes that his death comes during a period of turbulence for the Norwegian royal family. He is expected to be succeeded by Crown Prince Haakon. Norway and the wider world are mourning a monarch who, by all accounts, genuinely tried to be a king of the people. Moving on, and this next story is one of the most heartbreaking of the day. According to BBC News, catastrophic flooding and landslides along the Nepal-Tibet border have killed or left missing hundreds of people. The disaster struck on Wednesday, and in the days since, rescue teams have been scrambling to reach affected communities in some of the world's most remote and difficult terrain. BBC News has been collecting survivor testimonies, and they are utterly harrowing. One woman described watching the floodwaters sweep away her father, her mother, her sister, and her sister's children, right in front of her. She described losing everything in an instant. These aren't just statistics. These are entire families, entire communities, wiped out in moments by a wall of water and mud. The disaster has torn through villages, destroyed infrastructure, and cut off access to areas still desperately in need of aid. The scale of destruction is still being assessed, and with difficult mountain terrain slowing rescue efforts, the full death toll is expected to rise. Our thoughts are with everyone affected by this devastating event. And the crisis on the Nepal-Tibet border isn't over yet. In fact, it could be about to get significantly worse. BBC News is reporting that Chinese authorities have issued a stark warning. A lake that formed after a recent landslide near the border region is now at high risk of breaching its natural barrier in the coming days. If it does, it would send a second surge of floodwaters through areas that are already devastated and struggling to cope. This is an extremely dangerous scenario. Glacial and landslide-dammed lakes in the Himalayas are notorious for producing what scientists call glacial lake outburst floods, sudden, violent releases of enormous volumes of water that can travel at tremendous speed downstream. Chinese officials are monitoring the situation closely, and emergency warnings have been issued. For communities that have just survived one disaster, the prospect of another wave is terrifying. Authorities are urging people to evacuate low-lying areas immediately. This situation is evolving rapidly, and we will keep following it closely here on Genai World News. Now let's shift to a story that sits right at the intersection of artificial intelligence, military power, and the law. BBC News and the Financial Times are both reporting that AI startup Anthropic has won a significant legal battle against the U.S. government. A federal judge in California has ruled that the Trump administration illegally retaliated against Anthropic, the company behind the Claude AI models. At the heart of this dispute is a clash over whether and how the U.S. military can use Anthropic's AI technology. Anthropic had raised concerns about the Pentagon's use of its models, and according to the reporting, the administration responded in ways that a federal court has now deemed unlawful. This is a landmark ruling. It signals that even in a political climate where the federal government has been aggressively pushing AI adoption for defense and national security purposes, private companies have legal protections when they push back. The Financial Times notes this ruling sets an important precedent for how AI companies can navigate conflicts with government clients, particularly around the military use of their technologies. For an industry still grappling with the ethics of AI in warfare, this outcome is going to be closely studied. Here's a story that cuts to the heart of economic inequality in America right now. The Financial Times is reporting that U.S. corporate pre-tax profits have surged to a record high. capturing the largest share of national income since the years immediately following World War II. Let that sink in. Companies are making more money relative to the size of the entire economy than at almost any point in modern history. At the same time, the FT reports that worker wages are lagging well behind, meaning employees are not sharing proportionally in this boom. Separately, the FT also notes that the American consumer is beginning to show signs of strain. Spending is up, but not in the areas that signal confidence and long-term growth. Instead, consumers appear to be stretching budgets on essentials while pulling back elsewhere. This combination, corporations thriving, wages stagnating, consumers under pressure, paints a complicated and somewhat troubling picture of the U.S. economy heading into the final quarter of 2026. It's the kind of data that policymakers, markets, and ordinary workers all read very differently, depending on where they sit. Over to the United Kingdom now, where there's been a notable policy reversal on defense spending. The Financial Times is reporting that the UK's new Chancellor has decided to shelve a target that would have committed Britain to spending 3% of GDP on defense by 2030. That target was championed by his predecessor, who, it's worth noting, actually resigned as Defense Secretary back in June, citing what he believed was a lack of ambition from Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government when it came to military funding. So now the new Chancellor is walking back that very target, and it comes at a particularly sensitive moment. The FT also reports that the Chancellor is facing pressure from lower-than-expected immigration forecasts, which could reduce the Treasury's fiscal headroom by as much as £4 billion, making ambitious new spending commitments even harder to justify. With a budget scheduled for October, the new Chancellor is clearly working hard to strike a balance between reassuring markets and managing the UK's tight fiscal position. But dropping a high-profile defense target will inevitably invite political scrutiny at a time when NATO allies are under pressure to increase military spending. And staying in the realm of geopolitics and defense, the Financial Times is reporting on a pointed questionnaire that the United States has sent to its European NATO allies, essentially asking them to demonstrate where their true allegiances lie. This comes amid ongoing friction over defense spending commitments within the alliance, and signals that Washington continues to push European members to take on a bigger share of their own security burden. Separately, the FT reports that Europe's wealthiest member states are calling for a drastically smaller shared EU budget, a sign of the fiscal and political tensions pulling at the bloc from multiple directions. Taken together, these stories paint a picture of a transatlantic alliance and a European Union both under considerable strain. The question of who pays for European security and how much is not going away, and the answers will define the shape of Western geopolitics for years to come. That's a wrap on today's top stories. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you found this useful, drop a like below, and if you're not subscribed yet, now is a great time to hit that button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode of Genai World News. Stay informed, stay sharp, and we'll see you next time.